you. Yeah, you. The one hearing us right now. Welcome to Cryptic Soup. I'm Thina.
And I'm Kylie. We wanted to say hey and tell you about our podcast. It's a podcast we both host where we talk crimes, cryptids, murders, and a lot of wild stuff in between.
You can find Mothman, Jeffrey Dahmer, SeaWorld, Spectrophilia, Casey Anthony, or even Skinwalker Ranch to be just a few of the crazy topics we cover.
We even do some fun urban legends to make you feel like a kid at the campfire again.
We're just two best friends hanging out, diving into all the things that your coworkers think you're a weirdo for wanting to talk about. We have a new episode every Tuesday at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're always open for case suggestions.
Our Instagram is at Cryptic Soup Pod, where our DMs are always open, so slide on in. We always want to hear your opinions about any cases and episodes we cover.
You can find our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most podcasting platforms. At Cryptic Soup Pod, the menu is always overflowing with crazy topics you'll want to hear about. So join the conversation today and come hang out with us.
Stay tuned.
The subjects of this episode will be the dispute over how many actually died in the capital at the hands of the Japanese, the preparation that led up to the battle, which will in turn answer the question of how so few could destroy so many, the safety zone that gave just the slightest bit of reprieve from the horror happening in the city, and the heroes that established it. Even if some of those heroes might make you feel a little conflicted. The end of the occupation and the cover-up that followed, and finally, the trials that held very few of these monsters responsible on our third and final episode of The Rape of Nanking. I'm Kevin Young.
And I'm Dan Hergen.
And this is Torture.
It truly is torture.
This episode won't be as torture-y as the past two. So you get a little bit of a reprieve from the absolute horribleness that we've had lately. The end, you'll feel good about some stuff. The end of the episode, you might be a little pissed off. As it happens with these kinds of things.
I was gonna say that's kind of par for course for this whole thing, really, isn't it? Like it's
exactly who gets punished, who does not. Yeah. Nothing I can do about it. I don't know what to tell you. It was 80 years ago. I can't do anything.
I was going to say, in the words of the great Dave Grohl, I've got another confession to make.
Yeah.
It's the only episode I haven't listened to that we've up since after we've uploaded them.
I don't blame you. So
exactly.
I have the episodes up. I have a timestamp in there. If you're listening through that episode and you didn't feel like listening through all the horribleness, including some of the jokes that were told, you can skip forward to
they
that
were the worst part.
And actually, if you go watch it on YouTube, I got fancy and I put chapters in for this one, so you can kind of jump around to the certain things. Even have a chapter that's Dan's first joke, or the contents of the video, Dan's first joke. So
not my first joke ever.
Yeah, ever. Let's see how he did. You can jump forward. I think it's like 36 minutes and 30 seconds in or something like that. You skip over and you go straight to when the women start fighting back. But hey, if you were able to get through all that without skipping forward, banana sticker for you. Congratulations.
Do I get a banana sticker? Because I sat here throughout all that.
You can have a banana sticker, yes. I get that from Metalocalypse. Did you ever watch Metalocalypse when it was on Adult Swim?
Back in the early days of it.
Death Clock.
You know, like I think I watched like I can't remember how many episodes. I'm not gonna.
I think I got the first season on DVD. I fucking love that show. God damn it. It's probably my favorite Adult Swim show of all time. Then Rick and Morty, then Moral Oral, then Robot Chicken. But that's just me.
I liked Robot Chicken, but that's only because I watched Robot Chicken. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really. One of my favorite ones was always Assy McGee. That was just the best show ever made, as far as I'm concerned.
When with Robot Chicken, with the Batman ones that they used to do, when they had the old Batman with the gray shirt and the blue pants and the blue cowl, just like the really old looking Batman. I found that, and the Flash. I found that Batman and the Flash, those exact ones that they use on Robot Chicken at a comic book store over the weekend, last weekend. I showed my wife. We almost bought them, but we spent way too much money that day anyway. So it's probably a good thing that we did. All right, so we do have to get into talking about some of the horribleness that happened, even if we're not going to get very detailed in it like we did last one. So how many people actually died in Nanking during the occupation? Well, that gets a little muddy. So there have been some that want to exacerbate the number to upwards of like 800,000. This number takes into account the population of the city, plus all the troops and all the visitors. It doesn't take into account the numbers that escaped before and during. They also add in all those that died during the evacuation, which we will get to in a second. Others lowball the number to below 100,000, which is just asinine. There's no way it was that low.
No.
They had more than 100,000 troops that got killed, let alone civilians. So that's not even close. So the most credible investigations into the number put it between 340 and 355,000. So that's
pretty kind of accurate, if you get me. Like, you know what I mean? Considering in comparison, like, you know, I mean,
So you're looking at between 190,000 and 200,000 killed collectively in groups, you know, with the mass executions that they did. And then between 150,000 and 160,000 killed individually. Just people taken out on their own and slaughtered for whatever reason. The question then,
So it's all ridiculous.
The question then arises, how? How, with the massive numbers of troops and civilians in the city, did the relatively small amount of Japanese take over? Well, the blame for that can fall on the Chinese government and the absolute clusterfuck that was the preparations for the battle to come. And I mean, God damn it. Just for fuck's sake. So the residents of Nanking knew that the invasion was eventually going to come. About August 15th, just shy of 4 months before the Japanese would overtake the gates, the air raids began. And they would hit wherever, whenever they could. Schools, hospitals, power plants, government buildings, railways, prompting thousands of people from all classes to flee or to make an attempt. There's stories of people. You look at videos or pictures of in like India of people just piling onto the trains, and there's just it's like it was a lot like that. And there's stories of people falling from these trains when they would get too full. They would actually strap themselves to the bottom of the cars.
Oh, Jesus.
But whatever.
I think they are Tom Cruise.
Yeah. What I thought of when I saw strap themselves to the bottom, I thought the guy in Polar Express, how he's got like a hammock down there and he's just kind of living. But it wasn't like that at all. They strapped themselves.
Gonna be like Keanu Reeves in Speed when he's trying to disarm that bomb and he's on the
underneath the bus
floor thing.
Yeah.
And this stupid little cart thing.
Well, I mean, they would just take whatever they could to like tie themselves up to the bottom, but that didn't always work So it would give way and they'd fall underneath the train. A lot
And-
of times you'd hit and roll and then out in half,
Sorry, but like, so these air raids and these attacks, right, are happening before the new guy takes over, the asshole takes over, basically. So this is during the time when I want to say the nicer of the Japanese.
Matsui, the man with tuberculosis and all that, he was still in charge of everything during this.
So
yeah,
it just kind of doesn't. It's just weird considering the fact that when he said that when they were going to Nanking, basically to take everybody prisoner and not to kill innocents or whatever, and all that sort of stuff. And then next thing, then they're like, I can understand from a military perspective. Again, I'm not military minded or anything like that, but I can understand a certain amount of it, which is yes, if you bomb infrastructure, that could help them defend themselves. And says, bomb railways, stop supplies.
Yep.
Bomb ports, things like that, ways in out major supply routes, stuff like that, but like schools, hospitals.
They
it's
it was well, you have to remember that this was also a couple of years before the Germans started doing the same thing in England. Just dropping bombs wherever the fuck they fell. So, and they were allies at the time. So, I think it was kind of the same mentality, is just take out whatever, wherever you can. That way, when we get there, they know, hey, we're going to do whatever it takes. So just let us in and we'll take care of you. And
reduce resistance.
It wasn't one of those things with the air raids where it was constant, like every second of every day there's a bomb falling. It was a couple times a day at certain points in the city, at least from what I've read. Certain times, certain points in the city would have a couple bombs dropped. Whatever got hit, got hit. Actually, the boat, the Panay that will try to get people out during the mass evacuation, when they're trying to evacuate, it was like, all right, let us get out before you kill a whole bunch of people. This boat had a lot of people on it, and they sent planes and they bombed the boat.
Right.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So, which I'll get to that too here in just a minute.
Goddamn bunch of assholes.
That's one way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, some of the boats that were leaving during, this few months where people were like, fuck this, I'm getting out. They were getting so filled up there, just like the trains, that people were falling off the boats and then going under the water. Now, it wasn't as cold as it was in December, obviously, but they weren't drowning because of how cold it was. They were drowning because they were going underneath the boat, getting sucked under the waves. And
sucked. Yeah.
So the death started way before the Japanese actually arrived at Nanking. But obviously not everybody decided to leave. There were many that felt like they should stay. Maybe the Chinese army would be able to hold the Japanese off. Who knows? So for those months, the citizens saw thousands of troops march off to war. Again, this is still during the battle at Shanghai. Tanks, pack mules with uniforms, rifles, machine guns, going out headed to the fight. But when the news of Shanghai's defeat came, Chiang Kai-shek, the national leader of China, skipped town. There's a whole big
I remember you said that all right, yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole big thing about, well, he skipped town, but he left some people there. He left, like, his political rival who was in charge, the way that they kind of had it, not like, it wouldn't have been like, Donald Trump leaving Hillary Clinton in charge.
I was going to say, that's one way of losing the political race anyway. It's like abandon you all, leave this other guy in charge.
But like the people who were under him that came up during the revolts that kind of put him in power in the first place, there were some people under him that kind of challenged him during that time. One of the people that was under him kind of had a job, but was one of his, quote unquote rivals, somebody he was always having to look, over his shoulder for. He's like, you stay and you make sure that the army, fights for the capital. I'm getting the fuck out of here. Which
right leader
will be problematic as you'll see in just a second. So soldiers started readying the city, digging trenches in the streets, some of which were then filled with alive and dead bodies, so tanks could drive over them.
Yeah.
Barbed wire in the city intersections, fortifying the city walls, machine gun turrets, walling up the gates, all that good shit. They unpacked hundreds of boxes of weapons and ammunition, more than enough to last 5 months of a siege. I mean, they were ready. They cleared this part, so the Chinese don't get off, without a little bit of the blame for the death and destruction, because they would go and clear an entire mile-wide battle zone around the entire circumference of the city. Again, it's one of the biggest cities in the world, and they're going a mile wide outside the city gates of those city walls and clearing it with fire to anything and everything. Trees, brush, farmhouses, huts, bamboo groves, entire suburbs burnt to the ground. Just
to give them better sight lines, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, they wanted to get rid of all the places that Japanese soldiers could hide, make it kind of just a clear pathway. Going back to they were kind of going back to the old ways of fighting a war, where you don't just go in and kind of guerrilla style. You set up a battle. You set up a battlefield, battlefield, and you go to fight, because that always worked out so well for everybody back in the Middle Ages.
It did,
set up a battlefield. You look at it, it would seem like, okay, the Chinese are armed and ready, but when the government abandoned the city, they took all the good communication equipment with them. They left some of the old shitty stuff, but not like stuff, again, Nanking's huge, not stuff that you could like communicate across town with unless you were on just like a landline telephone, and most of those were being destroyed anyway. They got rid of all the high-powered communication equipment.
Seen them flying out in an airplane full of Nokia 3110 big brick phones, so the guys are sitting there left with coconuts and tin cans with string and stuff.
If they had,
or the Motorola's.
Yeah, if they had one of those old Nokias I had when I worked construction, they wouldn't need weapons. They could just use those.
They use that, yeah. Just throw them.
Indestructible. When they skipped town, they took communication equipment, and they took the trucks that were supposed to be used to get civilians and troops out. They took all this shit. Chiang Kai-shek's just like, load everything, and then instead of packing up people and taking them, and instead of packing up troops and taking them, saying we're going to get out, we need to get as many people out now as possible, they started loading up the trucks with like valuables from the embassy.
Yeah, of course. Why not? Like, it's...
Well, save the fucking people. China's huge.
No, you got to save those gold-plated monkeys or whatever shit they have sitting up on there.
You have plenty of Buddhist temples with beautiful sculptures and shit. You'll find more. Fucking save the people. No, they save the stuff. But whatever. And on top of all that, many of the troops were from separate areas of China and spoke pretty much completely different languages. Cantonese and Mandarin are not the same thing. Not even close. Plus, many of the quote-unquote soldiers were kidnapped and or drafted against their will and forced to fight. They weren't trained properly, and the ones that had been were just back from the front line in Shanghai and were tired and injured. So on December 9th, the Japanese Air Force started dropping pamphlets over the city that said...
That's my birthday. Oh, yeah.
Again.
Back to my birthday again.
Back to your birthday. Ah, crap.
Yay!
When they started to drop pamphlets over the city that said the best thing to do for the city and its civilians was to lay down their arms, because the Japanese would be, quote, harsh and relentless to those who resist and kind and generous to non-combatants and to Chinese troops who entertain no enmity to Japan.
That's a half-truth.
Well, I mean, that's what Matsui wanted.
Mm.
He wanted...
Yeah, well, they got the first sentence right, and that was about it.
Yeah.
Like, after that, it was kind of
Yeah, just an asterisk in the fine print, like subject to change.
Subject to change of management. Yeah.
Yes. And they told them to surrender the city by noon the next day, or else. The army, to most of the troops' disappointment, declined the offer. So the Japanese began the assault the next day. All-out bombardment on the city. Machine gun fire in the walls, all that stuff. Chiang Kai-shek told the leaders of the army the next day to give up and retreat. Be like, fuck, we should have taken them up on their offer in the first place. Pack your shit and go. And then he's like, well, some of you go. And he told I can't remember his fucking name, and I had it, but it doesn't matter. He told the guy they left in charge, he's like, you can get out, or you can stay. Really? I think you should probably get out, right. But if you want to stay, I understand, but you should probably get out. But I want everybody to know that I told you that you should probably get out. But if you want to stay, I'm not going to argue with you, but you should get out. I mean, one of those, like, he's going to do what he wants to do. I told him type things. So I was going to say
you would have butchered that guy's name anyway. So
I would have ruined it. Yes.
Yeah.
So on the 12th at 6 p.m., the mass exodus commenced. Army and civilian alike. Everyone had exactly 12 hours to get out. And if you ever watched a disaster movie, and you could see that, say, oh, tell all the residents to evacuate, you know how well that usually works. Traffic jams and the such.
I was going to say, yeah, I think Independence Day tunnel scene, dog nearly getting lit on fire thing.
Exactly.
Blown up.
Or one of the first scenes of, The Walking Dead, when Rick's riding the horse into Atlanta, and you see the line of cars that are all burnt up on the way out.
All those very slow zombies catching up with all those very fast cars that got stuck in traffic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Idiots. I don't get that, but anyway.
They told them, get the fuck out, 12 hours, because once 6 a.m. hit, all weapons, ammunition, and the small amount of communication equipment left behind was to be destroyed, along with all the roads, bridges behind the retreating army. All chaos broke loose. Troops were left behind with apeshit. Chinese tanks started rolling over their own soldiers trying to get out. Troops would break into stores to steal civilian clothes. Entire regiments stripping to their underwear in the streets to not be seen as soldiers, attacking pedestrians and ripping the clothes off their backs. Guns and ammunition that the troops had on them were thrown away.
Nice. So we have an army coming towards us. What are we going to do? Get rid of the weapons, boys. Let's stand here in our underwear and chill and wait.
So if you're sitting there wondering, well, why the fuck would you destroy all this shit? First off, it's an evacuation. You're trying to get the people out. So the trucks that would normally be filled with ammunitions, weapons, communications equipment, all that stuff was left behind for more people to fit on whatever you're taking. But then you say, why destroy it? Because the last thing you want is to leave more shit for the enemy to pick up and use.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well,
so they destroyed it. Well, they figured that the Japanese were going to come in and be, not monsters. They figured they would come in because they'd said, they're like, anybody that, we come in, you give up, you'll be treated well, we'll take care of you. We just want to occupy the city. We just want to put in a government and run, the city. So when all of this is taken over by the Japanese here not too long, we'll have a centralized government to work out of. But all you people are going to be fine. That's what they were told. And many of them believed it.
To be fair, that's what the army were told initially. That's what their orders were initially anyway.
Exactly.
So.
And why soldiers would throw their guns and ammunition? Well, because if you're found with guns and ammunition, then you're going to see is somebody that is trying to fight the Japanese, and they might kill you. So if you're just in regular street clothes, no guns, no ammunition, no communication equipment, hopefully there's a chance that they won't kill you. Everybody did this on the guys that the Japanese were going to be people of their word and not, rape everyone when they get in there.
Well, the guys were standing around in their underwear, to be fair.
Some of them,
when they got there, you know. So,
fortunately for the citizens of Nanking, there were some Americans and Europeans that, even though they weren't only offered passage out of the city, but were urged extensively by family, friends, and even those in the government to get out while they could, decided to stay behind, putting their lives in very real risk to help ensure the safety of the people they've come to see as their own. These people would set up the International Safety Zone and keep the hospital working. There were a few that stayed behind. I can't focus on every single person. We'll focus on 3, mainly because it's who the book focuses on, because they kind of stand out above the crowd as for what they did. A German businessman, an American surgeon, and an American professor. So
America, fuck yeah, yeah.
So first, the German, without whom there would be no safety zone. A man that saved countless lives, sometimes single-handedly. They actually call him the Schindler. The Schindler.
Yes.
Yeah, they called him the Schindler of Nanking.
Knew it.
They also called him the living Buddha of Nanking.
Oh.
A man
right.
by the name of John Rabe, which is kind of weird that his name would be so close to rape. It's R-A-B-E.
Yeah.
So not only the leader and mastermind behind the safety zone, but also one that kept an extensive diary, which was able to give us a detailed glimpse into the life inside the gates of Nanking. If your city is being under siege and there's horrible things happening, and if you have the chance to do it, write a diary, because, it helps everybody know what was going on. So,
Anne Frank, there you go.
Exactly.
That's a very important piece of history.
Yeah,
right there.
And we'll actually get to somebody here in a few minutes whose diary would have been as big as Anne Frank's if it had been for the Japanese.
I didn't know it as the Chinese Anne Frank, like that. The Anne Frank of Nanking. So you had the
she might have
Schindler of Nanking.
She might have been. So John had lived in Nanking since 1931, selling telephones and electrical equipment to the Chinese government for Siemens China Company. He didn't grow up there. He grew up in Hamburg, Germany, but he moved to China as a younger man, and absolutely falls in love with it. Falls in love with the place. Falls in love with the people. He's raising a family there. He absolutely loves it. Bald with glasses, a suit and a bow tie. Now, when I was reading about him, I like to do what I think most people do, is I try to think of who would play him in a movie, or who famous he looks like, because you hear a description, you picture somebody in your mind. So I thought of, and I'm sure I'm going to probably fuck his last name up too, Mark Prokisich. He plays Colin Robinson on What We Do in the Shadows.
Mark what?
Prosksch. Prokisich.
I recognize the guy.
You know who I'm talking about? Have you ever seen What We Do in the Shadows?
Him, all right. No, but I recognize him from something.
I think you would absolutely love that goddamn show. Holy fuck, it's funny.
Okay.
But
I know for a fact I've definitely seen it or something. So.
Yeah, he plays Colin Robinson. So I thought that's who I kept thinking of while I was reading this. And then I found a picture of John Rabe. Dan, go ahead and go look up a picture of John Rabe.
Okay.
R-A-B-E.
Yeah, make sure I spell this correctly.
Yeah.
Rabe me. Oh, wow. Okay.
They're the same fucking person.
Oh, my God. Does the picture... It's really funny, right, is when you Google Mark Proksch, whatever way you want to pronounce his name. Apologies, Mark, if you ever listen to this. But one of the images that comes up when you go Google and you go into images is him standing there in like a blue check shirt, kind of like my shirt that I have on at the moment, blue and black. And then I switch back and forth onto Google searches between that and the one of John. And there's an image that's him almost put in the exact same pose in the suit. And it's just like in the exact same position on Google as well, which is even funnier.
It's fucking crazy how much alike they look. Because when I saw the picture actually popped up in the book while I was reading through, and I audibly went, "Holy fuck!" And I showed
John has those. Sorry, I was gonna say John has those very stereotypical German round glasses. When you think of, I'm trying to think of a villain that was in something. Like your man in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, doesn't he have those kind of glasses?
Kind of, yeah.
He's supposed to be German.
Yeah, pretty much any German.
That's the only
any
difference.
movie with a German villain from like the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s had those glasses on.
Yeah,
but if you look,
hello.
Yeah, if you look at pictures of Colin Robinson, he's in a suit and glasses, and I mean it's creepy how much they look alike. So if you're wanting to picture John Rabe, just think of Colin Robinson, and that's pretty much what you got. So anyway,
that's pretty good.
Rabe quickly became the beacon of the German community in the city, administering his own German school for elementary and junior high school students. But, and this is a big but, you may feel slightly uneasy about cheering for John Rabe, even with all the good he does. Now, Dan, he's German in the 1930s. Can you take a wild guess as to why we might feel uneasy about a German in the 1930s?
My assumption on this is that he has a very particular pin on his lapel at all times that most people of a very specific political party would wear, who didn't cause quite as many deaths as the Catholic religion. I just want to throw it out there. But people like the Catholics.
Maybe does a lot of saluting with his right hand straight up.
I can see that, especially when you see other images of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for those of you who haven't figured it out yet and don't know what we'd be talking about, a German in the 30s, John Rabe was the leader of Nanking's Nazi party. So it kind of makes you go, motherfuck. There's always a catch. Now, again, it needs to be stated, like right off the bat, that from what we're told from those who were around him, one of those being his granddaughter, who grows up knowing him, loving him, he believes staunchly in the socialist agenda of the Nazi Party and the philosophy of being for the workers. And we're the workers' party. We only care about the worker. But he was not in favor of the genocide of an entire race of people or the persecution of the Jews. Holocaust has not started yet. All right, Holocaust is still a couple years away. So
especially, people get confused between the whole Nazi political party, Nazi involvement, what happened with Jews and stuff like that. It's very different.
Yeah, you could have been in the political party then and not been a quote unquote, what we would see now as a Nazi, a bad, you're wanting to go kill all the Jews. It's like you can look at you could say, the Republican Party doesn't mean you're a Nazi if you're a Republican.
But again,
technically, it's just social and financial issues that you worry about, not necessarily murdering people.
Like the person we already mentioned, though, like Oskar Schindler, was a member of the Nazi Party, and it was because of it being the Workers' Party.
Yeah.
Which is why he was a part of it, and he was far from he wasn't like the racist, genocidal Nazi.
Exactly. There were actually many Germans that worked to help the Jewish people and all the others that were being persecuted in Germany and Poland and all over, Europe at the time. They tried to help them get out, tried to help them get away from the concentration camps, not be murdered. So it's a weird thing. In favor of socialism didn't necessarily mean you're in favor of the murder of 6 million people.
I'd say Indiana Jones still wouldn't like him, though.
No. I don't know if he'd throw him into a plane propeller or throw him off of a blimp. But
I think he's more of a hit with the whip, ask questions later kind of person, though. So
Didn't bring a ticket. Yeah. And
So
so according to all these people, and according to his granddaughter, he was definitely one of these that wanted the agenda for the workers and for the people, didn't want people murdered. And his actions will pretty much prove that he cared about people too much to just kill someone just for being born different than himself. But still, Nazi. So take it for what you will. If you feel uneasy rooting for John Rabe throughout this thing because he's a Nazi, I don't think anybody's going to blame you.
Again, it depends on his stance. Yeah.
So the idea of the safety zone started actually in Shanghai. Now, during their siege, they had a safety zone for 450,000 Chinese citizens. About 24 people, mostly foreigners, got together and designated a region slightly west of the center of the city for a safety zone, strategically placed to encompass Nanking University, Gingling Women Arts and Science College, the American Embassy, and various Chinese government buildings and hospitals. The idea that this would be a very temporary home for those in the city that weren't troops and would close down after the Japanese took the city and established order back to the capital. It wasn't one of those come stay here for 10 years while they fight this whole fucking war. It was get in here, hunker down, the troops are going to fight it out, and if the Japanese do end up winning, which they probably will, then we'll all come out and they will take care of us. It was pretty much that. It's
very much just go to Winchester and wait for this whole thing to blow over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Dogs can look up.
Yeah. I'm just saying, if we ever end up at war, we end up having to make a safety zone. I'm going to demand it be known as the Winchester.
All the unidentified flying objects that we've been seeing lately, they all turn off to be UFOs. They're just scoutings. And aliens come. What's going to happen is Dan and I are going to meet up somewhere called the Winchester. We both know. We know. Got to get to the Winchester. There's probably 1 million of them. Well, we got to get to one of them. Figure it out.
We'll go to all of them until we
one by
until
one
we get there.
Until we find warm beer, and crisps.
Okay, beer.
So at first, the Japanese just refused to honor the zone. Again, even the gunboats that were used to get diplomats, journalists, and refugees out, that were supposed to be like, hey, these guys are cool, don't kill them, was bombed. And like 2 people died. A lot of people were wounded. Apparently, there was a back and forth between the pilots and the ground crew. Like, they're telling them, like, bomb that boat. And the pilots are like, we don't want to bomb the fucking boat. They're just trying to not be killed. And they're like, bomb the boat anyway. Apparently, it was a pretty big back and forth until, pilots ended up bombing them.
And then the pilot ended up on a Running Man. That's the start of the Running Man.
That's the start of the Running Man.
Yeah.
So for months, like I said, the city had endured aerial bombardments, and the safety zone was no exception. Wherever the bombs dropped is where they dropped. So, in late November, Rabe had had enough and decided to do something about it. He did what any good German would do. He wrote a letter.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's how we work. We go through the proper channels.
We are very unhappy with the way you are treating our citizens. Please stop us now.
So who does a German Nazi in China write to get shit done? Can you take a wild guess on who he wrote a letter to, Dan?
Starts with hit, ends with lur.
Oh, he wrote
guess.
To the Fuhrer, of course.
Yeah.
Yes, John Rabe wrote a letter to Hitler to request, quote, kindly intercession in asking that the Japanese government grant the building of neutral zone for those who are not fighting to battle for Nanking. He also telegrammed General Counsel Mr. Kribble, quote, asking cordially for support of my request of the Fuhrer, which otherwise would make a terrible bloodbath unavoidable. Heil Hitler, Rabe, Siemens representative and head of the International Committee on Nanking. Now, naturally, he got no response from either. However, Not long after his correspondence, the leaders of the safety zone noticed that the bombings were no longer landing indiscriminately across the city, only military targets. And this kind of perked people up like, holy fuck, he actually did it. He wrote a couple letters and he got shit changed. That really bumps him up like in the pecking order to what.
Well, is that what happened? Like, did that actually make the difference? Like,
is don't know. But you're taking one thing and then another thing and putting them together. So they were bombing everybody, and then he wrote a letter.
Circumstances and all that.
Not too much longer, they stopped bombing everybody. But whether that was the reason or not, that's what everybody believed. So John Ray went up even higher in people's thoughts and respect. Like he got shit done.
My assumption, is that they were running a little bit lower on ammunition after having raided Shanghai and now been sitting there bombarding there, and decided, let's stop bombing everything and let's concentrate, because we only have a limited supply of this stuff and we need the infrastructure.
That's
that's
an astute observation.
Yeah, no, that's Fiora.
Because it doesn't seem like a very Hitler thing to do. Be like, would you quit killing all the people?
Yeah,
it'd be more of a kill more people type.
Yeah, stop killing all the people that look different to me. Yeah.
So the zone seemed to be the safest place in the city since they weren't bombing everywhere now. Most citizens started showing up en masse in expectations of the coming battle. Soon, the 2.5 square mile designated for the zone was bursting with 250,000 refugees. It's about 100,000 people per square mile. For context, the most densely packed city in the world is Manila, the capital of the Philippines, with people building homes literally on top of other homes. It has 46,178 people per square kilometer.
Jesus.
Do a little math. Yeah, do a little math with the miles and to kilometers and all that shit. This easily makes the safety zone, if it were around today, the second most densely populated city on Earth. They were literally on... People slept on lawns. They slept on stairways. There was nowhere people were not packed in.
I was just kind of thinking of, is it Kowloon? Is that the name of the place? It's all just apartment high-rise buildings all jammed into each other in Hong Kong.
Oh, possibly. I
think just give me a second. I'm just looking. Yeah, it's Kowloon. Yeah. If you Google Kowloon city, holy schmoly! Like, it's sheer lunacy is what it is. That's what I thought was the highest densely populated area in the world. But if Manila is worse, then I can only imagine. I have to Google Manila.
Well, in Manila, it's... Yeah, holy shit. Motherfuck.
Apparently, there's 1.9 million inhabitants per square kilometer.
In Kowloon?
It's, as according to 2021, some documentary thing. It's written here in French, so I can't really read it. That says Le City. So I guess that means the city. My French is terrible. It's brilliant. But 1.9 million inhabitants per kilometer square now. So that's obviously now the highest density populated thing. But it's sheer.
Well, there you go.
But that's still absolutely crazy though.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking about
tents set up in yards next to other tents set up in yards. I mean, people were everywhere. So when you have this many people, it sets up a few problems, namely food, medical supplies, clean water, shelter, and of course, sanitation.
I was going to say, waste.
People got shit.
Yeah.
But all these things...
How many people per square kilometers again?
Well, for Manila, it was 46,178. I didn't do the math, but I'm sure I think it's 2.5 square miles is like 6.4 square kilometers, I believe. So
just trying to think of that many people pooping. It's like that scene in Jurassic Park. There's a big pile of shit.
yes,
Just so to be like,
it's just one person. It's just one group of people shitting all in one big pile.
Back in the pile.
But all these horrible things that had to be taken care of, Rabe took those on personally. Now, overseeing the cleanup and maintenance of the toilets in the camps, driving his own vehicle, along with some other people in the camp, to get a cache of food that had been stored outside the city during the bombardments, opening up his home and his school to the women and children that were seeking refuge. They would literally be driving their vehicles from where the food was stored to the safety zone through the city, trying to not get shot at or bombed while doing it. Like every excursion was a fucking action movie.
Yeah, I can't imagine that now. To be fair, like I don't even know what to say.
Yeah,
I just kind of try to have these kind of mental images of everything.
But he, like many others, thought once the Japanese breach the gates and take over, everything will be fine. Then they did. Afterwards, Rabe explored the city and found corpses and burned down buildings. He actually chased some Japanese soldiers out of a German-owned coffee house, and they went and burned it down. Then he began to notice the rapes. So he did what any good German does. He wrote a letter.
Yes.
Several, actually, to the Japanese embassy, but it did little good. Soldiers were still sneaking into the zone and killing and raping women. Rabe decided to take it into his own hands, pretty much becoming motherfucking Batman in the process. And you might as well have given him a cloak and cowl, because this motherfucker is going around doing, he's doing the kick-ass shit. He's just wandering around town saving people.
Just walking around going, they're going to love me, and punching people.
He would roam the streets, either on foot or in car, looking for those in need. Inevitably, someone would stop and beg for his help to stop a rape. Rabe would then be directed to the crime in progress and either chase them away or physically grab the assailant and pull them off the victim. One story he wrote in his diary goes as such, quote, "The mother of a young, attractive girl called out to me, and throwing herself on her knees, crying, said I should help her. Upon entering the house, I saw a Japanese soldier lying completely naked on a young girl who was crying hysterically. I yelled at this swine in any language that could be understood, 'Happy New Year!' And he fled from there, naked with his pants in his hand."
I'm Bat John. That's what he said.
Bat John. I'm Red Man.
Yeah. Oh God, that doesn't sound right.
That's horrible. Somebody's like, "What did you just say?" He says it with the German. I'm Brave Man. No, don't call yourself that. Not now, especially not now.
Yeah. Get ready for justice, yeah.
I shall save you. So he would turn his home and office into a sanctuary for his employees and their families, which was the reason he stayed behind in the first place. He felt obligated to make sure that his employees were safe. They couldn't leave. They didn't have the means to leave. They didn't leave, well, neither did he. Captain going down with the ship. And all of this, he reported to Hitler. Again, more letter writing. Everything he did, he reported back to Hitler. So why was he able to get away with all this? Why did the Japanese run from him and no one else? The Japanese military feared no one, except for the military of their ally, Hitler. So when Rabe...
except for Bat John was the only person they feared.
You just look up, there's just a light up in the sky, and it's just a bald head.
Yeah, the glasses.
So when Rabe would pull up with his swastika on his sleeve, the Japanese knew to get going. But like I said, there were others that saved people of Nanking, like Robert Wilson, otherwise known as the only surgeon in Nanking. He was a graduate of both Princeton and Harvard, kind of an achiever, if you ask me. But
Yeah.
But since he grew up a missionary's kid in Nanking, that's where he decided to open up a medical practice. He felt like that was his home. So he went back to his home. Now, for all those months during the bombardment, and even after the occupation, Wilson went to work. Even after the staff at the hospital fled the city, Wilson stayed and helped people. And remember, these aren't just the run-of-the-mill sick people. This is severe trauma, unlike anyone had seen. One story about a woman in desperate need of attention goes, quote, and when I read this, you're going to go, bullshit. And I said the same thing, but this is what they wrote. This is what, like, one of the nurses who worked in the hospital, one of the very few that stayed behind, I believe she wrote this in her diary, and that's where we get it from. So take it for what you will. But this is about a story of a woman in desperate need of attention. And
hold on a second before you start.
Go ahead.
Is this going to be the guy who was apparently cut in half, and they bring him in, and he's somehow still alive?
Staple him back together.
And it's like, I swear he cut me in half with one blow.
And it's like, it's not lined up right. It's like one eye is higher than the other.
Yeah.
No. Quote, she was one of the 5 women who the Japanese soldiers had taken to one of their medical units to wash their clothes by day and be raped by night. 2 of them were forced to satisfy from 15 to 20 men, and the prettiest one as many as 40 each night. This one who came to us had been called off by 3 soldiers into an isolated place where they attempted to cut off her head. The muscles of the neck had been cut, but they failed to sever the spinal cord. She feigned death and dragged herself to the hospital, another one of many to bear witness to the brutality of soldiers.
Dear Lord.
Again, I can only go by the story that's there. How they cut through all the muscles of the neck, but not the spine. I can understand you don't get through the spinal cord because it's inside the spinal column, and you might not have been able to get through the bone. But how you cut through the muscles without cutting all the arteries and veins that are in the neck and you bleeding out?
That's the thing, I think the only way that makes sense in some ways is if you went in through the side, which is exactly where the arteries are.
Yeah.
You went in through the front, that's the windpipe. Went in through the side, there's the arteries.
Yeah.
Went through the back, you're getting the spinal cord.
So,
like,
take it for what
happened is she has a scratch. This girl went in with a scratch on her neck.
Either she has a scratch or she has arteries and veins made out of fucking titanium. I don't know.
Or adamantium. It's Wolverine's daughter or something.
It's vibranium. She comes from Wakanda. I don't know. So Wilson and the other few that had stayed in the hospital pretty much ended up living there, working in shifts, protecting the hospital in shifts. There were always Japanese people or the traitorous Chinese people that had turned against them, always trying to sneak in and find out who was where, so they could give the army better idea of what was going on in there. And they're always trying to combat, the army coming in, taking people and all this. Patients who had nowhere to go weren't discharged. It wasn't, okay, you're good to go, you got to get the fuck out of here. Is where are you going? My house is gone. Okay, well, you're just going to stay here then. And those that could leave and had a place to go were escorted home by foreigners who were less likely to be murdered by the Japanese in makeshift ambulances. And they did all of it for free. Not a single person was charged for anything. Now, this is pretty much a wartime.
What are you going to spend it on anyway?
Yeah. Now, obviously, if this happened in America, they'd have to make sure your HMO went through. They'd have to see, you come in there with an arm missing. They'd be like, well, we don't accept Blue Cross Blue Shield. We only accept this. They're not paying, they're not paying through the state.
Yeah, their medical insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was here, you'd be waiting about 6 years to see somebody.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have the whole we have health insurance, but we don't have the issue that it is in the States where you won't get seen without it, kind of thing.
Well, if you have the money to pay for it.
Well, but you know what I mean? Like, it's. But, here you'd be waiting months upon months or years upon years. Yeah. Apparently, there's a whole thing here now, actually, so I don't want to divert too far. But no way, like, everywhere has, like, across Europe, Ukrainian refugees and stuff like that. And there's been a whole thing here where they're flabbergasted at how long it takes them to see a specialist for anything. So if you want to get just normal generic medical care and you want to go into the A&E
Mm-hmm.
thing. I don't know if that's what you'd call it over there, but you go in, get seen to for something, whatever, it's fine. But if you want anything above
Yeah,
that,
if
then
you
you
need
need specialists
scheduled
at all.
care, yeah.
It's impossible to get it here.
Yeah.
You know, like we're waiting for 5 months for the results of an X-ray from where our son hurt his foot. And we think he
Wow.
fractured it. Yeah, still haven't gotten the results of the X-ray.
The doctor calls me, well, it's broken. Like, yeah, but it fixed
Yeah, I
itself
said, oh, that's
already.
great. Thanks.
It's fine.
Yeah, thanks.
We
That's why it's upside down. You know, he's walking around with his foot going like flipping around like this.
So this leads us to Wilhelmina Vatrun, or Minnie, to those who knew her. Minnie is what we will call her. So I don't have to keep saying Wilhelmina or Wilhelmina. Yeah, so we'll just call her Minnie. She was the head of the education department and dean of studies at Ginling Women's Arts and Science College. A 51-year-old Midwestern woman born and raised in a town of Socorro, Illinois, which is just about an hour north of me, which I find kind of neat, was one of the only faculty to stay in Nanking after the occupation. She took it upon herself to make sure the safety zone was prepared for female refugees and to help evacuate wounded soldiers from the area. She disguised their identities and burned the military papers and garments in the college incinerator. She directed the moving of furniture into attics, emptying of safes, cleaning of dorms, and the hiding of valuables. She personally stood at the entrance of the zone from 8:30 in the morning to 6 at night to be the welcoming face to the thousands that poured in daily. When the Japanese stormed the college, looking for Chinese troops and women to kidnap, she also took it upon herself to hide everyone she could, mostly in the attic of the building where she was able to pack away 200 people. The attic would come to house over 1,000 women by the end of this whole thing. So
That's pretty strong attic.
Everybody's
like,
it's a university, so I mean, it's got a pretty good size attic, but still, that's a lot of people crammed into a fuck. If you've ever been in an attic before, I don't like being up in an attic with more than 2 people anyway. So
yeah.
Now Minnie
was wooden soldiers.
Yeah, fucking wooden soldiers. Now Minnie was sometimes yelled at and slapped for not letting the Japanese soldiers in the buildings or rooms she didn't want them to go in, telling them, sorry, no key. Don't know what you want me to do about it. Yeah. Now she, much like Rabe, would physically put herself between the women who were being dragged away from the zone and the soldiers that were doing the dragging, many times ending up with swords or guns pointed at her face. So when she wasn't welcoming, hiding, or protecting the women of Nanking, she was doing everything she could to comfort them. And on top of all this, found the time to write a diary detailing the events of those 6 horrible weeks. And this diary should have been every bit as important and famous as Anne Frank's famous journal.
How does she find a time to do that? Like, if she's standing at the door from 8:30 until 6 o'clock, she's overseeing all this other stuff. She's basically standing there telling the Japanese to shove off every 3 minutes, you know, and then spending her time like cleaning out dorms or arranging them and overseeing the whole thing, basically.
I don't know.
And then she's like, "Oh, I've got time to write my diary, all these detailed accounts."
She's a fucking girl boss. I don't know. Well, I don't know how any of them did any of the stuff they did. I don't know.
Serious work ethic.
Yes. But she was one of these that absolutely loved not just the people of Nanking, but the Chinese people, the Chinese culture, the Chinese land. Anytime she'd go home to come here to Illinois to see family before this and after this, I'm sure, all she did was rant and rave about China. She brought home souvenirs and whatever else she could from China, gave them to family. She taught all her family how to eat with like chopsticks and how to eat like the Chinese do, how to cook like the Chinese do. She would teach them.
There's a long pause.
Yeah. She
taught her family how to eat.
Stop. You don't just take them and stab them after you got to do this. Yeah. She loved China. There was nothing about China she didn't love. So she did this purely out of the love she had for the land and the people. But the question is, this journal's so important, why didn't it become as famous as Anne Frank's journal? Why isn't it studied like hers is? Why isn't it required reading in high school like Anne Frank's? So at the very beginning of the occupation, there were reporters in the city seeing and documenting the atrocities that were happening. But once they left a few days into the occupation to go to Shanghai to report back to their respective news organizations, the Japanese closed off the city as to not let in any more reporters. Other reporters saying that while they were driving out, they actually had, and I'm not talking about in like January, saying driving out like 4 or 5 days after the Japanese breached the gates.
Yeah.
They're driving over mounds of bodies to get out of the city. Japanese are like, "You're reporters, yeah, you can get the fuck out. We don't need you here." And they're pulling up to like the docks to go across the river, to go across the bridge, and looking over and seeing just a line of Chinese people right there next to the river, just being mowed down by Japanese soldiers and falling into the river and drifting away. And then they just drive over the bridge and go like it's just another
Christ.
day.
Yeah. That's messed up.
Yeah. And then when later on in January, when reporters were allowed back in, all of them were accompanied by Japanese representatives. Reporters weren't allowed to just come in and wander around, take pictures of what they wanted, write down what they wanted. You had a Japanese representative taking you to specific spots, watching what you were doing at all times. They did everything they could to keep the ambassadors to China away until, the mess could get cleaned up. But honestly, it just came down to Japanese propaganda, saying that what the Chinese and Americans and Europeans were saying was just slander against the Japanese, their sworn enemy. They even went as far as to stage pictures of the city for distribution throughout Japan and the rest of the world, calling on the Chinese managers of the refugee camps for a spontaneous celebration on New Year's to be held in the city, making the Chinese make and carry thousands of Japanese flags in a parade for a motion picture that would illustrate crowds of joyful residents welcoming Japanese soldiers. The Sin-shon-po newspaper in Shanghai, it's a Chinese newspaper, but it's being controlled by the Japanese. So
yeah, we'll be at this stage, yeah.
Yeah, so people are reading this paper thinking, oh, it's coming straight from the Chinese, when in actuality, Japanese government was the one running the paper. They wrote the headline, "The harmonious atmosphere of Nanking develops enjoyably," and claimed, quote, "The Imperial Army entered the city, put their bayonets into their sheaths, and stretched forth merciful hands in order to examine and heal." Yeah.
So poetic.
Well, they did. The Germans ended up doing the same thing with the Jews, where they would find some who were kind of like smiling and happy. They like give a little kid a piece of bread and they smile because they're not going to be starving for the next few minutes. And they take a picture of them and be like, "Look how well we're treating everybody. There's no Holocaust, but Auschwitz? What is that? I don't know what you're talking about. Everybody's happy over here. It's joy.
Our gas bill is at a reasonable rate right now. What are you talking about?
Americans go home. Russians get back to over there. Go sledding or whatever. It's fine."
Yeah, so there's loads of well-known propaganda shots from that. Just the one of the flag being hoisted, isn't it, in on top of one of the buildings in... Oh, I can't remember which city it is now off the top of my head, but the one I'm talking about. It's a very famous photo.
Yeah, that was kind of par for the course. Propaganda. We're not doing anything wrong. Just leave us alone.
Hearts and minds. That's how you win it outside. You see, that's propaganda side of things. Anybody who isn't there, it's the only way you can get, realistically, the Japanese had to get the rest of China to be okay with what might come later if they were to take over.
Right.
Without any more resistance, basically, is obviously the thing. Look, they've taken the capital. They've done it in sunshine and happiness, and everybody's happy in there together. And
well,
and all the sex is it's done willingly. So apparently,
yeah. Well, and if everybody knows exactly what's happening in Nanking, there's a better chance that somebody's going to come and try to stop it. We can't have that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like a third party, even, or whatever.
It's pretty much the same shit's going on in Russia. The Russian people have no idea about the Ukrainian war because Putin won't let them know. Well, we went to the Ukraine and everybody's happy about it. They love it. So the Russian people are like,
yeah, kicking ass for taking names. Yeah. Let's go Russia.
So now I've said many, many times, the rape lasted for 6 weeks, but the occupation actually lasted for years. The Japanese didn't just come in for 6 weeks, fuck all the women and then take off. They came in, set an example of what they were going to do, and then just stuck around. They were, saying, well, we're setting up a government here. This is what's going to be after we take over all of China. We'll have a government already set in place. So they were there.
Yeah.
Damage done to public and private property, not including the immeasurable cost of human life, obviously, was about $972 million US back then. Today,
Jesus Christ,
that would be worth just south of 20.5 billion with a B.
Yeah.
And this was the part that kind of shocked me when I read it. All those air raids that the city endured before and right there at the beginning was only about 1% of that damage. All the rest of it came from the troops.
What did they just what? Did they just go around just blowing shit up randomly, just leveling buildings?
Yeah,
just for the crack,
they burned down buildings. They completely destroyed entire neighborhoods by themselves. Not with aerial bombardments, just by themselves, driving tanks through shit and all that. Yeah, about 20.5 billion. So about 20 billion of that was just caused by individual people. It's ridiculous.
So that's just a bunch of kids on the beach just stamping on sandcastles.
Exactly. Now, after the 6 weeks of horror was over, it didn't mean the pain was over. People knew that they could come out of their houses and walk around and probably would not be shot and killed for it. But you still didn't just you didn't poke the bear, but you knew you knew the bear was there, and the bear was cool with you walking around. But if you came near the bear's gonna rip your face off.
Bear poke you.
Yeah. So opium soon made a surge in the city, and addiction became rampant. The Japanese also opened up a facility in April of 1939 for human experimentation, named EI 1644. They injected or fed Chinese prisoners with a variety of poisons, germs, and lethal gases, including acetone, arsenate, cyanide, nitrite, prussate, and snake poisons, killing about 10 prisoners a week. And they kept this going until the Japanese surrendered in August of 1945. So from April of 39 to August of 45, you want to do the math, 10 people a week, however many weeks that is, there you go. It's a lot. It's a lot.
That's, yeah. Just messing around, experimentation, just to see how these things were taking effect. It's oh, well, it's it just sounds terrible.
Yeah.
This reminds me of The Simpsons when Mr. Burns is in the restaurant and he had to pick their own cow.
Uh-huh.
And they kill it. And he's like, that didn't put much of a fight. I want that one. And then they go off and get another one. Yeah. I'd like a glass of milk. Bam. That's probably what it was like.
So when the Japanese surrendered, Unit 1644, they just decided to blow up the laboratory, destroy all the data, and hit the road. Okay, well, this is over. We're done. Goodbye.
It's like snake venom, killed, check, boom, see you later.
Yeah.
That's not what it gotten from. It's is this lethal or not? We already know it's lethal, but yeah, just...
Well, and it's
you have to do something with the government funding.
Yeah, it's just like the experiments that Goebbels and all of them did in, or Mengele did in the concentration camps. Well, what happens if we inject bleach into their eye? Well, they'll go blind.
Yeah,
well, there's only way to really know for sure. What will happen if I take the kidneys out of this person, put them in this person? Well, they don't have the same blood type. Well, let's find out. And you do it, and the person dies.
Yeah.
What happens if we take twins and we sew their backs together? Well, they'll die. So, eventually we'll cover the shit that some of those the doctors of the concentration camps did, and it'll be just like this episode. You'll go, God damn it, why am I doing this?
More time for German accents
exactly.
as well. Du hast mein linken Horn gestohlen.
So for all the people that when I talked about Japanese and human experimentation, whose ears perked up because they know where I would be going with this, we will cover more of this group and what they did when we cover Unit 731 some point down the road. We've had enough of the Japanese horror stories for the past few weeks. We'll cover that at some other time. Unit 731 it's terrifying, just so you know. Now this will lead us to the trials. So the occupation goes on until, Nagasaki and Hiroshima get fucking bombed. And the Japanese go, okay, enough. And we'll go home. They left Nanking. Everybody's, back to where they're supposed to be. But then there are the trials. Obviously what happens when you're in a giant war and, there are war crimes, you have tribunals. So they had separate trials in China and in Tokyo. In Tokyo, the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, or the IMTFE, began on May 3rd, 1946. This fucking trial lasts for 2.5 years.
I'll tell you, but say weeks or something for a second.
3 times longer than the Nuremberg trials. It is the longest war crimes trial in history. 419 witnesses. 49,000 pages of transcript with 10 million words, 779 affidavits, 4,336 exhibits, which don't you usually go Exhibit A, Exhibit B? You're going to run out of letters.
It's gonna be like one of those really crappy Excel spreadsheets they get in work all the time.
And through all that, only a small handful were punished. Prime Minister of Japan, Koki Hirota, and a small, frail, tuberculosis-ridden man by the name of Matsui Owani. Like we talked about, the guy who wanted to take over Nanking with love.
Yeah, the only nice one of them all.
He lived. He actually lived through the war long enough to be put on trial. And 5 other Class A war criminals were hanged December 23rd, 1948. Here's the part that might piss you off. Matsui was the one who wanted to go in the Nanking, be like, listen, we're going to take care of you guys. If you put up a fight, you're going to die. Obviously. Yeah. But if you don't, you'll be taken care of. Prince Asaka comes in going, kill them all. He didn't stand trial. He got immunity.
What?
He was the emperor's uncle.
Oh, yeah.
He's family.
Prince,
these people under here, you want to kill them for what they did. Yeah, horrible. Shame on you. But him, no, you can't touch him. He's family. He's lineage. You don't. I read that. I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding. First, Matsui shouldn't have really. He was doing what he was supposed to do as far as leading an army. He's like, kill all the troops, march into the city, leave the civilians alone. That's what you're supposed to do. He's
a fall guy,
but
obviously
it's his Japanese honor. He stood up and said, I was in charge of all this, and even after I got, quote, promoted out of the field, I was still in charge of a lot of stuff. I didn't stop it. So I'm just as guilty as these people. So he died mostly because it's something he chose.
Yeah, he's a bit of an idiot. No offense to you, dude, but that's stupid.
So then you have the Nanking War Crimes Tribunal held in China. Now, Hisao Tani, who we have not spoke about, he was a lieutenant general for the 6th Division of the Imperial Army, Now, this was the division that perpetrated many of the atrocities in the city. He was found guilty and killed by gunshot on April 26, 1947. Also, the captain from the same division, Gunkichi Tanaka, who personally killed over 300 Chinese POWs and civilians with his own sword, and 2 others you might remember. Maybe printing their escapades in the newspaper wasn't the best of ideas, because...
Sorry, I was going to ask about them, actually. Yeah, I was waiting to see.
Noda Takashi and Mukai Toshiaki are killing contest celebrities, were all sentenced to death and shot January 28th, 1948. And that's pretty much it. The rest of the soldiers that killed and survived just went home, lived their life, raised their families, seen as heroes in their countries until death. That's it. Those are the only fucking people that stood trial for all of this. It's infuriating.
And who won the competition, though?
I don't know. You know who won the competition? The Chinese people, because eventually they died. That's who won.
That's so anticlimactic, that competition.
But it's not like with the Nazis that they all ran off to Argentina to not be found, and then people went and found them and brought them back, and they stood trial and they were killed. There weren't as many Nazis put on trial and put to death as there should have been, but at least the hunt for them, the hunt for justice, went on. After these 2 trials and this small handful of people getting found guilty and killed, that's it. That's done. That was the end of it. No more. Done. Okay, we took care of it. You go your way. I'll go ours. We'll go ours. That was it. It's infuriating.
Yeah, it's just a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, because they're obviously getting tongue-tied. They're obviously the only people they could have named or held accountable, because you can't just go, yeah, that's random Japanese soldier number 2 there. I know he did this or that without anything to back it up. Whereas the other guys had documented proof in newspaper things of fucking Gimli and Legolas fucking that's it only counts as one, shit going on.
But you think that, but then you go back to the Nazis and you say that there were a lot of Nazis that were found out decades later, just living their life in either America or South America or wherever. Even some still in Europe. Jews who had survived the concentration camp saw them and be like, that was the man who was putting people in the gas chamber. And they arrest them, go to trial, and they're either found guilty or innocent, whatever. But that hunt went on and on and on and on to find anybody they could. But for some reason, with the Japanese, it just didn't. They didn't, unless there was some wild band of Chinese fighters out there that went looking for these soldiers and killing them like hunters on Prime with the Nazis. It just, that was it. That was the end of it. A handful of people were found guilty, and then everybody just goes back to the way things were. And it pissed me off to no end when I read that. Now there's a whole much
so unfair.
Yeah, there's a whole much bigger story about that you can get into about textbook suppression and all that. But that would make this a 3-hour long show. That's just not going to happen. Irish Chang championed for years for this to be taught in schools and to shine a light on the terror that the Nanking people went through. Unfortunately, November 9th, 2004, around 9 a.m., she was found in her car on a rural road south of Los Gatos, California, dead by an apparent self-inflicted gunshot. Yes, there was, for a while, a conspiracy that she was murdered by the Japanese government or Japanese nationalists, but evidence points to mental health struggles and depression being most likely the culprit. Now, this was a very, very Cliff Notes version of this event. We cover the highlights, I guess you would call it, but it's in no way 100% the entire story. Yeah. from what everyone went through to the very short Japanese history we gave you to the trials. It's just really the tip and maybe a little bit of the middle. Just the tip, just to see how it feels. Go read the book. It's worth it.
I'll say that's what the Japanese said.
That's right. But that concludes our series on the rape of Nanking. I apologize to everyone.
I have to say it was a roller coaster.
A little bit.
Like, just
a little bit. There's nothing makes you feel good. Roller coasters usually feel good moments and moments that don't make you feel so good. There's no feel good moments in this one. It's all just from the second it starts, except for maybe the story of Ling Shou-ying or Li Shou-ying.
kicking the guy's asses. Yeah, that's
ass. That's an uplifting story, but for the most part, it was all just horrible. So sorry about that.
It's damn interesting though, but my God.
Yes, then this is what I love. This is what I love history, and I love finding out about this shit. And then you find out about it, and you're like, "Fuck! I wish I knew, and I never knew. I wish I never knew any of this stuff." Fuck. All right, we would like to thank the Cryptic Soup podcast for starting off this episode. We'll have a link to them in our show notes. Please go follow us on Instagram and all the other social medias at TorturePod. Email us, torturepod@gmail.com. If there's anything you would like for us to cover, or if you have any comments or questions, rate, review on Apple or wherever you listen. If there's a way to rate and review, follow, subscribe to us wherever you're listening. If you just found us or heard somebody say something and you looked us up, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Head over to our YouTube page. I got some snippets, some excerpts, and full episodes on the show that you can watch. I guess. I don't know. There's not really anything to watch on there except for your logo and a thing going in the back, but whatever. If you'd like to donate to the show, you can on our link tree, which you can find on our socials. You can buy us coffee at buymeacoffee.com/torturepod, which can be found on our link tree, which can be found on our socials. We're currently still working on getting some merch out. Listen, it's been a busy few weeks.
Also a roller coaster.
Yes. So getting the merch and the Patreon out like I wanted has taken a little bit longer. We're recording this on Wednesday. It's supposed to go out on Sunday. With my schedule between now and then, I'm going to have to edit, and I don't know if I'll get it all done. So hopefully this came out when it was supposed to.
Sure. Look, it's 3 weeks. You can forgive that kind of. I'm sure everybody is okay with that, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm not, though.
Sure.
That's the thing. I'm not. It drives me crazy when I can't get shit done the way I'm supposed to get it done. But
tell him there now, everybody. He can hear you. Tell him it's okay. It's okay.
Crickets.
We forgive you.
All I hear is crickets in there.
Damn it, I forgot it's not a live show.
But we are going to be working on getting the Patreon up and getting merch up. We can actually technically start our Patreon now because Dan finally wrote his song for Joey after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again,
it
Joey,
just took me a long time.
Yeah. But we'll get that and the videos of us it's straight through. We don't cut anything out. Just the way it is. Hint for our next,
including all my coughing.
Yeah, coughing and my sniffing and all that shit.
Yeah.
So the hint for our next episode. Sorry, Dan. There's more than one way to scalp an Irishman. Yeah.
Look that one up.
Yeah. Well, Dan, you got any pearls of wisdom before we let you go?
Not quite. No, I realized at the start of this one we didn't. This is the first episode we've ever done where we didn't go into loads of banter at the start for 20-30 minutes and then move on to the main subject. We went straight in, and we're recording an hour and a half now, nearly, or whatever. So it was probably about an hour 20 long minutes with zero banter. So aside from that, no, it's just kind of nothing new with me, really.
I just wanted to get.
I got a new headset. I got a shock mount that doesn't work. That's about all I got.
I got a new computer. I call it Ziggy. This is the
nice.
The computer from the original Quantum Leap. My brother and I used to watch.
Oh,
Quantum
yeah.
My brother and I used to watch Quantum Leap together. He passed away 30 years ago, and so computer Ziggy. Now my last one, my shitty one was named Mr. Bojangles. So.
Oh, right. Jesus. I always had this whole thing of like, I'm going to redo my computer at some stage. And I always had this whole thing of when I get to do like eventually in the next couple of years, do the proper studio room. It is going to be named Mother. After the computer and Alien.
Yeah. I had looked through some different names of famous computers, and I almost went with a few different ones. Mother came up. But I was like, Ziggy. I like Ziggy. It's very Ziggy.
Yeah, Ziggy's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm Ziggy.
I'm pretty sure this PC is actually called Mother. I'm pretty sure I have it down as the PC name. It's down as Mother. Already. Yeah. All
right, people are sitting there going, oh, okay, here they are getting into the banter. All right, there.
Yeah, you can skip past this bit. The main part's done. If you want to,
you can turn off the episode.
You don't have to wait for the music to go.
The analytics have already shown that you've been listening for more than 6 minutes, so it's already put in there. So I'm good. If you stop listening, go ahead. All right. Guys.
I wonder if anybody can translate the German that I spoke earlier on. I'm waiting for that because I actually did say a proper sentence in German.
I'm sure you'll probably get some. I'm sure we'll probably get some. He'll be like, "How dare he?"
Oh yeah, it wasn't a very nice thing to say. I'll tell you after we stop recording.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, with that, take care of yourselves and take care of one another, and we'll talk to you next time. See ya.
Slán.
Thank you.